Okay guys, look. Everything that happened in Infinity War happened over the course of like 2 to 3 days tops when you think about it. So stop trying to figure out where this is going to fit in the timeline. Just watch the movie. It'll make sense or it won't. These are supposed to be fun. Stop trying to turn them into homework. Okay? Okay. So anyway. The original Ant-Man was supposed to be famously part of the Phase 1 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, but wound up being pushed off to Phase 2 by the busy schedule and eventual changing hands of original director Edgar Wright to Peyton Reed. This sequel, once again with Reed in the director's chair, follows the tradition of the sequels to Phase 1 Marvel movies by being an almost completely different animal than the first one, eschewing the jazzy, laid-back family comedy vibe that made the original such a breath of fresh air after the decidedly dreary Avengers Age of Ultron, in favor of a propulsive, always-moving, plot-heavy, race-against-the-clock action chase movie where the offbeat humor mostly gets backburnered in favor of filling out a character mythos and more conventional action set pieces. I imagine that'll be welcome news to some fans who weren't totally on board for the first film's centering of old-fashioned slapstick and bizarro riffs like the toy train and briefcase fight that use the size-changing gimmick to poke gentle fun at the bloated absurdity of your average superhero action sequence, and there's a fair share of business here involving size-changing cars and buildings getting carted around like luggage, and another Lewis tells a story bit, only one this time though, and the Hello Kitty gag from the trailer. I was just kind of hoping that this series would keep more of its own weird identity going forward. That's not to say that Ant-Man and the Wasp is somehow bad, just more like I'm not feeling quite as stoked as I was right after Part 1. Anyway, set some indeterminate relative point between Civil War and Infinity War, just wait for the after credits and you'll figure out where this is all supposed to fit, I promise. The story finds Scott Lang waiting out the last days of what seems like a fairly light house arrest sentence for that whole Sokovia Accords violation thing. Like, in the other movies, they kind of made it seem like that was a high treason thing, but here he just kind of has to wear an ankle monitor. Like, shouldn't he at least be in jail with Michael Keaton or something? But anyway, he gets contacted by the now fugitive Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne, who've been on the run from authorities as his technical accomplices. Oops, and they're still pissed at him, but they need his help. See, ever since Scott proved it was possible to unshrink from the subatomic quantum realm at the end of the previous movie, Hank has been building a machine to replicate that trick in hopes of rescuing his long-lost, possibly still alive wife Janet, aka the original Wasp here played by Michelle Pfeiffer, who got trapped there back in the 70s and they believe for extremely convoluted reasons has imprinted some kind of quantum map to find her in Scott's subconscious. So the goal is to get all the various players and pieces of made-up science stuff into position to pull this off within the obligatory, arbitrary, small window of time in which it can be accomplished, which is complicated by a need to retrieve one or more science stuff components from a crew of normal criminals led by Walton Goggins, needle some information out of an uncooperative former frenemy of Hank's played by Lawrence Fishburne, and contend with a wildcard supervillain called Ghost played by Hannah John Kamen, who honestly everything about Ghost is both confusing and somehow a spoiler, but she has weird quantum powers that make her kind of a cross between Kitty Pryde and Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph, I guess. Anyway, she's got a nifty looking costume and the effect is cool, and plus it's a Marvel movie, so you kind of know going in that the nemesis is more or less a red herring and the real villains of the piece are the hero's own mistakes and insecurities, Hank's past issues coming back to haunt him, Scott and Hope's strained would-be romance, and the dual ticking clocks of how long they have to rescue Janet and when Scott needs to get smuggled back home so he doesn't mess up his probation. And if all that sounds like a bit too much stuff going on, perhaps, for the Sherbert course of the MCU franchises, you're pretty much on point. Whereas the first Ant-Man basked in the relative freedom of being able to say, look, you remember this basic plot outline from when it was the basic plot of Iron Man, right? And take its time goofing off. Ant-Man and the Wasp wants to overclock the hardware and blast the hell out of everything all at once. And a lot of it is really cool. The business with the size-changing car chase is an easy top 10 Marvel Cinematic whatever action thing candidate, even if it kind of feels like something that should be in the Hot Wheels movie. Wow, I just realized there actually probably will be a Hot Wheels movie. What are they going to do for that now? Because this feels like what that should have been. Anyway, it just feels like some of the needs to happen because plot machinery stuff could have been trimmed back for more character interplay and humor, since that's where the gold is in this series. Evangeline Lilly is very good as the Wasp. She looks good in action, and they capably pay off the running gag from the first one that she really should have been the lead in the first place. I just wish there was more Wasp in the movie, honestly. Lilly is in most of the film, yes, but there's really only 2 big extended sequences where her and Rudd are both using their suits and doing the double act thing, though one of them is kind of the entire entire third act, so yeah. Well, a surprising amount of Act 2 is mostly about driving science equipment from location to location, though the character chemistry is so good you almost don't notice. Plus, there's a genuinely bizarre sequence used to convey an exposition dump that relies almost entirely on Rudd's abilities as an actor and Lillian Douglas' power of keeping a straight face to sell a moment in lieu of effects that's absurdly well staged, you'll know it when you see it, and even moving in its way that has no earthly business working as well as it does. I do kind of feel like Goggins' crew and a few of the other complications seemingly concocted to make sure winning elements from part 1, like the giant ants, Lewis and the gang, and Scott's family get screen time, especially if all the fan theories about Cassie Lang turn out to be true. And it's a little bit more stuff than it's really needed, but all things considered, I'll take a movie that tries a little too hard over a movie that doesn't try at all. 3 stars, not as good as the first, but I had fun with it.